All right, do you want to lead in?
Sure, I'll do it.
All right, settle.
Recording? Yeah, we're
Recording.
You always cut out right before the palm mute. Bumps me out. The intro.
Oh. I'll. Okay.
I don't know what to do with that note. That's okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fake Philosophers. I am Mitch. I'm here with Mike. We're going to be doing a little bit of a Poli-Tickle. I guess we're going to classify it as a Poli-Tickle this episode, but mainly we're going to, I guess it's more of a current events kind of thing, but we didn't know how to classify it, so we're just calling it Poli-Tickle. But before we get to that, we're going to get to, we're going to preface, bad sound. We're going to preface this episode with our segment. This episode not brought to you by. For those of you who don't know, this we all come across terrible commercials, and we want vengeance on those bad commercials for annoying us so much that we want to give them bad business because of it.
Yes.
I mean, that was my philosophy anyway.
Absolutely.
So this episode not brought to you by Pepsi. That's right, Pepsi. A cola drink. Now, some of you are probably wondering what commercial has Pepsi put out lately that's that bad to do it, and the answer is none. All of Pepsi's latest commercials are doing just fine. This episode not brought to you by Pepsi because of their fucking commercial they put out in 2017 with that Kardashian. Kid.
Right when you said Pepsi, I knew what you were going with.
Yeah. It was a Kendall. It was the Jenner
sure.
Kendall, whatever it was, holding the Pepsi during the BLM riots and all that shit. Pepsi needs to, they pulled the ad, they apologized, they still need to suffer because that was just terrible. Pepsi, there's a reason why you're only in all the poor fast food restaurants, and because no one wants you. You're the substitute. You're just terrible. Pepsi suffer mostly because of that commercial, also because your drinks are just okay.
So I am a Pepsi drinker. But that commercial There's moments like 9/11 that just unite both sides of the political aisle. That, like when that Fantastic Four movie came out, that was just god awful.
Yeah.
The most recent one, like I remember on the Jack of All Nerds one time we said that was like the 9/11 in the nerd community because like the spectrum of nerds all said this movie's shit. Like everyone united. And there's certain moments like that.
Is it the Jessica Alba one?
No. I mean, those ones weren't great either, but it was the one after that with like Michael B. Jordan.
I never saw that one. Wow.
You're not missing.
Wow,
it's bad. But then like there's events like that unite people, and even as a Pepsi drinker, like Pepsi drinkers and Coca-Cola drinkers, RC Cola drinkers, they all united saying this commercial's really bad, guys.
That was just the most. Just everybody, both sides were like, whether you were marching with BLM or you were trying to not sound racist as you disagreed with them. Mm-hmm. No one liked that commercial.
It was just bad.
It was just bad.
You talk about like, granted, like there are the dumb commercials where it's like, hey, when they start fighting, guys, relax, have a Pepsi. Like, oh yeah, and it's like, okay, fine. But yeah, a bottle of Pepsi is going to stop rioters. And
for those of you who didn't see it, Google it. It's amazing in a horrible way. It's the whole premise of the commercial is all this tension. They're showing the
riot gear,
the BLM protesters and the riot and the police on one side, and it was a tense moment. It still is. And the commercial summed it up by having Kendall Jenner walk over with a can of Pepsi and handing it to, like,
I think it was an officer.
Okay, and it was like the officer suddenly was like, or whoever it was suddenly just like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And
it's the politically amped. Here, have a Snickers. You know what I mean?
When you get hungry, it's the South Park scene. I mean, come on.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, come on.
The good thing about that is that it's created memes.
Oh yeah,
for years.
It was your meme. You posted your meme on one of your stories that reminded me of that, and it was just like, oh, that was great.
Oh yeah, it was her giving the Pepsi to the Taliban.
Yeah. Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
That's our segue into today's episode. Today's subject for today's episode.
So, to those who, if you haven't been watching the news, which some people don't.
Some people don't. So for those of you who don't watch the news, don't go on social media, don't listen to a radio, don't walk past a newspaper stand.
One, we envy you. Two,
you got it figured out.
Yeah. Two, recently, Joe Biden and his administration decided to move forward on withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. And long story short, it's not going too well. Within, I think I have the timeline right here, and so we're just going to go. I've already read this. It's pretty even keeled. It just kind of lays out what's been happening.
Straight facts, whatever. That's what we wanted to. I know. Most of you are sitting here like, here comes another two guys who didn't serve even, who probably don't read more than 2 newspapers between us. Now they're going to give us, their opinions.
And you're right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. But just a quick lay down, just facts, no political bullshit. It was in February 29th of 2020. The Trump administration signed an agreement with the Taliban, setting terms for the U.S. withdrawal by May 1st of this year. Some of the conditions were that the Taliban had to stop supporting terrorist groups, and I'm kind of just summarizing what I'm reading. And that part of the pact they had to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners who were being held by the Afghanistan government, which part of the problem right away, and I'm not saying this is Trump's fault necessarily, but the Afghanistan government wasn't part of that negotiation. So that was part of the agreement, but they weren't in on the deal. But that was signed. March 1st of last year, the Afghan president, Ghani, I hope I'm saying that right.
Racist.
He objected to freeing the prisoners, and he says that there has not been a commitment for them to release those prisoners. 3 days later, March 4th, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff, I feel like I have a dry mouth right now. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, pretty much tells people that the Taliban has pledged in documents not to attack U.S. troops or coalition forces as they withdraw. Yes. Despite that, the Taliban attacks Afghan forces in the Helmand province, and the U.S. responds with an airstrike. March 10th, under pressure from the U.S., Ghani orders the release of 1,500 Taliban prisoners at the rate of 100 per day.
Real quick, because this is March of last year, beginning of 2020.
Yes.
This was still getting into COVID?
Technically, yes. So the lockdown started happening March 17th or 18th. So this is just before that.
Was this the that one terrorist leader that Trump droned out on his car on that way to the freeway? That one, the way to the airport.
I don't think so. I know what you're talking about. I don't think so.
Okay,
because I think the Taliban leader is still alive.
Right.
I think.
Okay, I'm trying to.
I think that was a different country.
Okay, I'll Google that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to get. I know this is the boring part, the breakdown, but get through it fast. So even though the Taliban signed this agreement, that they were still escalating violence, attacking Afghan troops, etc. I'm kind of fast forwarding, so a lot of this is kind of repetitive. That as time goes on, the Taliban's not adhering to their agreement, they'll stop being violent. And I guess part of this, which is why the Afghan government opposed it, was that, don't quote me because I'm not sure if it's in here, the part of the agreement was that they would not attack the U.S. and coalition, but it doesn't specifically say you can't attack the Afghan government.
Oh, okay.
I think, because I'm not sure if it lays that out in this one. Either way, it does say that you'll de-escalate violence, and that the Taliban did not. Long story short. Blah, 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 blah.
You must be really good at cold readings.
I am. I am good at cold readings for scripts. I'm trying to skip the boring stuff for the repetitive stuff. That's why I'm
I bet you'd be, just to fill in space here, I bet you'd be really good at reading this word for word, but going over it and picking the points out. I bet that's where.
I should have done that before.
I mean,
pick the points out. If I read it word for word right now, it would take forever, and people are clicking away.
If they're still listening.
Anyway, to fast forward, December 2nd, Afghan leaders and Taliban negotiators started to negotiate, but at the same time, the Taliban was still attacking Afghan troops. Mm-hmm. So the Taliban is obviously not a noble group or a group of integrity.
It's kind of like, yeah, we'll promise whatever you want. What do you want us to do? Sure, we'll do that.
I'm texting you saying, Mitch, I promise I'm not sleeping with your wife as she's sucking my dick. You know what I mean? So on January 15th, U.S. forces in Afghanistan reached 2,500, and that was the last. That was the last bit of the Trump administration. The Afghanistan's vice president pretty much says, I'm telling them as a friend, the United States as a friend, as an ally, that trusting the Taliban without putting in a verification mechanism is going to be a fatal mistake. Yes. So then Biden took over, and a lot of this is repetitive. He pretty much said he was going to do his best to actually go with that agreement that Trump made.
Okay.
Even though he didn't make the May 1st deadline. March 25th, he said it's going to be hard to meet the May 1st deadline.
So now we're into 2021.
This is this year, yes. This is now Biden's the president. April 14th, he says it's time to end the forever war and announces that all troops will be removed by September 11th. He gives his reasons.
So that was April or
This
end
is
of
April.
March. So that's basically a 6 month,
Yeah.
more or less, about a 6 month time frame.
5 month-ish. Yes, but yes, sure. 5-6 months. And a lot of this is just going back and forth. Biden saying we're going to do it. People saying maybe you shouldn't. The abridged version. The Taliban spokesman tells Foreign Policy that after foreign forces leave Afghanistan, the group's goal is to create an Islamic government, and we will be compelled to continue our war to achieve our goal. That's June 8th. The Taliban spokesman said, once these people are gone, we are going to continue our war. Pretty straight to the point.
Well, I mean, they haven't kept their word up till then.
So maybe this time
So
he
maybe
lies.
they're still lying, you know? We're definitely going to take our... Okay, yeah. You lied last time he said you weren't. So which one is it?
This is rabbit season, duck season thing going on.
Yeah. We just summed up war in the Middle East.
So I'm gonna quote this because even though I'm not a fan of Trump, I actually think we'll come back to this. On June 26th, Trump, I'm not sure if this was a statement or like he releases his statements or if he's being interviewed.
Or tweeting.
Well, yes. He said, I started the process. All the troops are coming back home. They, as in the Biden administration, couldn't stop the process. 21 years is enough. Don't we think? 21 years. They couldn't stop the process. They wanted to, but it was very tough to stop the process when other things... Well, hold on. 21 years by a government that wouldn't last. The only way they last is if we're there. What are we going to say? We'll stay for another 21 years, then we'll stay for another 50. The whole thing's ridiculous. We're bringing troops back home from Afghanistan. I want to say that out loud because we're going to come back to that later.
Okay.
That quote.
That was Trump in...
That was Trump in June 26th. Okay. July 6th, the military confirms that it pulled out of Bagram Airfield, its largest airfield in Afghanistan. July 8th, he moves up the timeline, Biden, for a full troop withdrawal to August 31st. He acknowledges that the move comes even though the Taliban is, quote, at its strongest militarily since 2001. He says that if he went back on the agreement that Trump made, the Taliban would have again begun to target our forces. So pretty much what he's saying is he's moving up this timeline because based on Trump's deal, good or bad, if he goes back on that deal, U.S. forces will come under attack again. So, okay. Biden adds the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. Okay. July 24th, Trump goes on, pretty much says the same things he did before. August 6th, Taliban takes control of its first province, despite the agreement it signed with the U.S. August 15th, this past weekend, Taliban fires into Afghanistan capital. The Afghan president flees the country. U.S. evacuates diplomats from its embassy by helicopter. August 16th, in a speech to the nation, Biden says, I do not regret my decision to end America's war fighting in Afghanistan, and deflected blame for the government's swift collapse. And then another quote, which I think is important. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometimes without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. And that's the end of that timeline. So now that's the boring stuff. Now we discuss.
All right.
Any opinions right off the bat? I know you were Googling.
It was I'm still trying to find out. Salami?
Salami?
Yeah,
the
guy
okay.
that he killed when he was in the airport or whatever. It has nothing to do with this, so anyway,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. It matters, but not to our conversation. Yeah, it's anytime there's unrest, which is most of the time in the Middle East. It's usually followed it's usually following a long series of negotiations that never follow through. It usually involves two parties that just hate the hell out of each other, and a third party that's moderate or mediating,
Sure.
which is usually us,
Yeah.
the U.S., who just refuses to acknowledge the fact that these are just two people that just hate each other. We're trying to look for that peaceful solution between the two when, it worked for us. I mean, there's always a peaceful solution over here in America. Why isn't there one here? And it's that failure to understand a culture in a whole other world, really.
Yeah.
So when you hear all these stories of like the bullet point, and this is just in my opinion, when you hear the bullet points of the events leading up to it, it's like, yeah, I mean, that always happens. There's always talks and there's always whatevers, and then there's little bits of attacks here and there, and there's always surprise.
Yeah.
So my opinions off the bat is just mostly just like, really, are we surprised by this? Are we surprised that Biden just moved out completely? He said he was gonna. And that's what people have been calling to do. It's just like, you know what? 20 years is enough. Goodbye. Regardless of what all the experts are advising or whatever. No one should be surprised that Biden did it. No one should be surprised that the Taliban
Did what they did.
And no one should be surprised that a lot of Afghanistani, oh my God, I'm going to quote The Office.
Afghans.
It is Afghans.
I think.
That's a shawl.
That's a dog. Guys, Afghanistan Annies.
The Afghanistan. No one should be surprised that a majority of the people there that should be picking up arms and defending themselves are just bailing because they just don't want to. They don't want to fight. They're tired of fighting, and so they're just bailing. No one should be surprised by any of this. We can still be appalled, but I don't think anyone should be surprised.
Yeah, it's This sounds awful. I forgot the exact quote, but in The Dark Knight, when the Joker says when you hear, I mean, this is kind of a weird thing, but like, I'm kind of twisting his words, but like when you hear about a caravan of army soldiers getting ambushed and wiped out, and you hear about it, it's kind of like, oh my God. And it's like, well, they're in a war zone. Yeah. Like, it's horrible, but what did you expect? And I don't want to sound like insensitive about that, but it is kind of like, why are you surprised? Like you just said. And that's horrible to say, and I don't wish that upon any of our soldiers, of course.
Right.
But
now, all that to say, there was a right and a wrong way to handle this, and
yes,
personally, I believe this is the absolute wrong way to handle it.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about that first.
Okay.
The issue right off the top is that, to my knowledge, there was, well, they even kind of said it. The vice president said if you withdraw, like the Taliban's not going to keep their word, there's going to be violence.
Right.
So if I'm Biden, and we're not international
experts,
diplomats, yeah,
I'd say we're about as capable as our president is.
That's fair, but even with his experience, like, because he's been in government forever, whatever. We're not. But I think I do. Yeah. I think you are a very intelligent person. I'd like to think I am.
I'd like to think you are.
Thank you. Right off the bat. So if there's obviously hints that the Taliban, because the Taliban was moving in on provinces for a week or so before the big capital takeover.
Right.
So if I'm the president and I see them moving, I'm like, okay, this is going to be an issue. Let's get whoever. So right off the bat, because let's be honest, it sounds cold. There needs to be a priority. On the Titanic, it was women and children. There has to be a priority. So we get Americans out, as many as we can, including the embassy, just in case. Just in case. Mm-hmm. 2, Afghan people who have assisted us, helped us, and pretty much pledged their loyalty. Let's take them out. Pretty much, you heard the story, like even in Japan in World War II, they dropped, apparently, I heard the story, I can't verify right now, that apparently they dropped like things from the sky saying, we're about to nuke you.
Yeah.
Do something like that, but tell the Afghan people, hey, if you want to be a refugee, get the fuck to the airport right now, and we'll take as many as we can. There could have been something done a week ahead of time.
There's just not to cut you off, but there was a post a friend of mine sent that was kind of in terms of logistics on how to handle a strategic retreat, I guess, or how to pull out. The order of operations should be: first things you do is you shred the sensitive documents or get rid of all the equipment, anything there that might be bad in the hands of the enemy. 2, evacuate the civilians and allies. 3, pull out the military. And then 4, announce that you're ending the fighting. Not the other way around. You don't announce, hey, we're pulling out by September. Then you just pull out all the military. Then you try to get the civilians and refugees out, and then shred the sensitive documents.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So I think I'm not sure if maybe it was one of those things like, oh, like it'll settle itself. I'm not sure if where his head was at. I don't know what the man was thinking or the people advising him on this were thinking. But yeah, like obviously there was, like you said, obvious things like shred the documents, this and that. But just, yeah, like you had at least a week. I'm not saying a week's a long, I'm not saying it's a huge amount of time.
Right.
But if you see the Taliban, I think it was August 6th.
That's a great name for the episode, by the way. You had at least a week.
You had at least a week. But it was August 6th was when the Taliban took its first province. So right off the bat, so the capital was taken, or the fighters entered the capital on August 15th. So that's a week and 2 days from the moment they first took a province to when they hit the capital. So as soon as they took that first province, again, I'm not a military strategist. I'm not the president. I'm not anyone. As soon as they took a province, I'm like, okay, they're aggressive. They are now making moves. Okay, put out the things. If you want out of this fucking country, if you want to be a refugee, you move now. Even all these disaster movies.
Yeah.
they're saying, they're like, hey, here's your warning. Get the fuck out now.
Yeah.
So now we have a week where we could send a bunch of transport planes to the airport, do all that shit, and get obviously American civilians out first, American contractors, all those people and their families, get them out first. Military stays, as you said, even at least to guard the airport, or at least help move people.
At least look like we're still staying.
Look like you care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're logistically right off the bat obvious mistakes. So that, in my opinion, that was the first topic I think we were going to address. Is
that'll be something that in the months after now, like in the months to come, people will be looking for heads to chop for that.
Sure.
Like who messed this up? Like,
you know what? If anything good comes from this, at least at the first place, both Democrats and Republicans were repulsed by this.
Yeah,
I think even
absolutely.
I forgot if it was the Senate or the House, but I read something that they're already starting to put together a sort of investigation of what the fuck happened. Democrats. So it's like, oh, like good.
This was a biff.
But good.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like really it's been how long since the evacuation of Vietnam, and we're doing the exact same thing.
That's something. Hold on to that. 'Cause that's something we're going to right, because that's another topic I want to talk about. That's going to be part of the reflection.
Oh yeah.
And then I do want to address something, because I try to be fair. There's a lot of memes and criticism saying that we gave the Taliban all these helicopters and tanks and etc.
Right. Yeah.
And at first I was like, fuck, because of course that's horrible. Then I looked into it. We didn't give them anything. Though that equipment was for the Afghan army. We gave it to the Afghan army.
Oh wow. Okay.
Now, we'll talk about the Afghan army, which I'm going to make a lot of ignorant statements off the bat. I'll say that.
In quotes.
I'm making a lot of, because I don't know for sure what I'm going to say, but at least I'm saying I don't know for sure, but I have some opinions about that, the Afghan army. But yeah, so the first thing, how it could have been fixed, I think you summed it up. I've been ranting, but you summed it up perfectly, that order. Like, get people out first, keep the military there.
Just from a logistical standpoint, if all politics aside, if no one agreed that we should have, if no one wanted to pull out of Afghanistan except the president and the Secretary of Defense, and that was it, and they're like, no, well, we got the power, so we're pulling out, even though everyone else said no. There's still a good way to do it.
Of course.
And that's kind of like that. Granted, we didn't serve. We have no military background.
I played a lot of Call of Duty.
Yeah, and I play a lot of solitaire, and so we don't really have any.
We're talking from a place of ignorance.
Yes,
but we admit it, and it's important to admit it.
Yeah.
At least we if someone's watching this, at least you acknowledge, like, okay, they might not know what the fuck they're talking about, and they know it.
Seems to me, to quote Ben Franklin, is that there should be a right way to do this, and that doesn't seem like the right way to do that. And I'd like to see some explanation on that. I mean, I think we're allowed to, as taxpayers, to say, hey, that doesn't seem right. What happened there? What happened?
Yeah,
there?
Can we get a little breakdown, little itinerary of what was supposed to happen?
Was that the plan? Because a lot of people need to get fired. Yeah. If that wasn't the plan, cool. Only a few people need to get fired.
If it's a plan gone wrong, fine. At least the plan didn't happen.
At least, the plan didn't happen, and a few people can, get punished for it. But if that was the plan, if that was always the plan, like, or there just was no plan, like, whoa.
Yeah. And then, so then going on to the next thing, in my opinion. So I will 100% say that Joe Biden did this wrong. He didn't. He shot his shot. and he airballed. With that said, historically, and we're talking about reflection, looking forward, looking in the past, it has to be noted that yes, this particular thing was absolutely Joe Biden's fault. He fucked up. But we can't forget George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. We can't forget any of that. Because George W. Bush, and I'm not necessarily mad at George W. Bush, because 9/11 happened, and to my understanding, if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, and I'll issue a retraction.
Or we'll just ignore you.
Or we'll delete the comment and ban you.
Yeah. We're admittedly biased, and we don't give a shit.
Yeah, but no, but if I'm wrong, 'cause it's just my understanding was we were obviously looking for Al Qaeda, the terrorist group.
Right.
Taliban said, fuck you, we're not working with you. So we were like, okay, you're in the way.
Yeah.
So that's when we actually went to war against the Taliban. Cool. One, you'll hear it historically. We went into Afghanistan without an exit strategy right off the bat. So that's George W. Bush's fault. Then we go to Barack Obama 7 years later. I forgot if he ran his campaign on it or if he just talked about it as president. But I remember him saying, like, by the time I'm done, all of our troops will be out of Afghanistan.
I think his point was more Iraq, getting out of Iraq more than Afghanistan.
Maybe, but I specifically remember him saying Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
I do remember that specifically.
Okay, cool.
And sure enough, I was reading about it the other day. Like, by the time his presidency was over, he actually added troops. So, like, hate him or love him, he did not help the situation.
Right. And then a person who's honest with themselves would look at it and be like, okay, obviously President Obama didn't want this to happen. It must be way more complicated and terrible than I thought. For him, for President Obama to say, I'm going to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, and then by the end to actually have them more there, be like, oh shit, okay, maybe it is pretty bad there. Maybe there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Because love him or hate him, Obama's not a stupid guy.
No.
Love him or hate him.
Right.
So then now we go to Donald Trump. Hey, kudos to him. I'm not a Trump fan. I make that pretty clear. But kudos to him to actually talking to the Taliban and trying to make something happen.
Right.
But even in that agreement, there was no contingencies keeping the Afghan government safe.
Whoever it said about that, was it the president of Afghanistan that said that there was nothing to keep accountability on the Taliban side.
And to my knowledge, again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. The agreement like if we were negotiating, like if you and Danny, our other host, were having serious fucking issues, and I wanted you guys to get along, I'd bring you both to the table and talk, like you negotiate.
Right.
I'm not going to talk to you and be like, hey, don't fight me. Just I'll leave the house, but don't fight me. Okay, if I leave, you're not gonna hit me in the back, and you're like, yeah. Then Danny's gonna be like, hey, fucker, he's fighting me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't. And granted, I will say I give Trump his kudos for trying to negotiate.
Right. But
you have to bring the other guy to the table.
Yeah.
And
I think President Trump kind of went in with that. Hey, do you remember what I did to ISIS? That whole that epic bomb I dropped. I think so. His what he brought was like that. Hey, if you go against me,
I'll fuck you up.
I'll fuck you up.
Which is another point I want to come back to later. Not just Trump, just that idea.
Yeah.
But then Trump did it. He was voted out. And I hear a lot of people, well, if Trump was still in right now, it would be blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, we don't know we don't know what Trump would have done.
I hate that.
Yeah, we could speculate. We could throw out all this speculation and conjecture, but we don't know.
There's way more positive things to be done with what's happening right now. With to be focused on that rather than if so and so would have, if whatever.
And the thing is, like, it's one thing if someone said, Mitch, go build a chair in the backyard, and I watched you try to build a chair, and you failed at building the chair. It's very easy to be like, well, if I was building the chair,
right,
watching you fail.
So screw all that. We're not going into that.
And that's not even my bias against Trump. It's just you don't know what he would have done.
Right.
With the information he had at the time. That aside. But so Trump, good for him for trying to negotiate, but the negotiations were flawed from the start. So we have 20 years of failure in this topic. So even though Joe Biden needs to own this failure as historically moving forward, we need to remember it wasn't just him. Right now, yes, 100%, he did this, his fault. But I think contextually, we have to remember the past. And we have to remember Vietnam. We have to remember all these other things because it keeps fucking happening.
Yeah. I mean, when you say the negotiations were flawed from the start, that kind of goes back to what I was saying, is that I think any negotiation in that area, that whole area, that any time we try to negotiate with any country over there, there's always a side that changes their mind, and negotiations always fall through. I mean,
Or they purposely say we want this to move forward, and it's something that cannot be given.
So I would say just starting negotiations is flawed. Like
That's an argument. That's an argument to be made.
Yeah. And I have a lot of very libertarian isolationist friends who take that point. It's like, you know what, America should have no involvement in that at all. We should let them just kill each other off and whatever. And I'm like, I disagree.
I think there's a spectrum of that you can't be too isolationist and you can't be too involved, but it's an international community now. You have to kind of be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I to reiterate myself, absolutely Biden, he screwed the pooch, but going forward, just to correct the future possible mistakes, we have to remember how we got here to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reflection. I was talking to my mama bear the other day about it, because we sometimes talk about current events calmly and stuff, and just reflection, like what is, first of all, and this is going to make me sound like a dick. This is one of those things, the things where I said I might be ignorant to this, but this is what I've observed. And this is actually why I brought up that quote Trump said, because as I said, not a Trump fan, but this resonates. We've been in that country for 20 years. If that country is not able to defend themselves now,
after 11 days,
it took what? Yeah, I think we said 13 days. For the Taliban to take the capital.
Yeah.
And I'm not dismissing the horrible casualties, the people. I'm not dismissing any of that.
I'm hearing you. Don't worry.
But 13 days.
They couldn't last.
I think they said there was 300,000 people in the Afghan army. And I think, I could probably Google it, but I'm lazy. I think they said the Taliban numbers were between 150,000 and 200,000. So even assuming you just math, you shot each other.
Yeah.
They're up at least 100K. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you've been trained by arguably the most powerful, most strategic, the best military in the world.
Yeah.
And it was 13 days.
That's more than just an inability to defend yourself. That goes to your true motivation, your true, do you even want to fight? Do you even want your land?
And it's one of those things, and again, this is going to make me sound like a dick. It's like the common story where like you have the son or daughter, the kid, who isn't, like, they won't move out of the house.
Yeah.
They might have a job, but they're not motivated. Like, they take advantage of the parents, and like, they're a good person, but like at some point, tough love, get the fuck out of my house. You're 37 and you're living at home.
Yeah.
And you've never lived on your, like, at some point, most parents go, hey, I love you, but it's been 20 years since you graduated high school.
Yeah.
It's been 16 since you graduated college. And I'm not dissing the kids like myself and you that lived with their parents for a certain amount of time, but like, my point is, there comes a time where you do need to take.
Yeah, there's analogies. There's fair analogies, I think. Like when you were describing the kid at home, this whole thing in Afghanistan kind of reminds me of that. If you're a parent or a sibling of an addict, and the family coddles them, and you see the unhealthiness of a family or a parent's or brothers or sisters or whoever coddling an addict who is trying, in quotes, to get better, but is not putting that real effort to self-start or whatever. And then the minute they're just like, you know what, I'm done. It's been 20 years and I can't do this anymore. They relapse like right away. And
or even to take that to another level, if you that addict, horrible addict, we grab them, we throw them into a rehab facility, and in the rehab facility for 20 years, in that rehab facility, and within 13 days getting out, they're on the curb. Yeah. In the gutter, and it's horrible to say it that way, but it's.
Well, I mean, Sun Tzu loves to point out that like what happens in the micro is equal to the macro. What happens to one person in a hand-to-hand, one-on-one fight, same principles can be applied to a multi-thousand soldier battle. In some cases, like the same kind of strategy, same kind of things happen. So you apply that to life too. What happens to one person can happen to a whole country in this case.
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, I'm not a Trump person, but like when he said that, I'm trying to find it real quick. He pretty much said, like, what are we going to say? We'll stay for another 21 years? Then we'll stay for another 50 at some point. Yeah. And that's where I'm not defending what Biden did. Kind of like what we said. I think the decision to pull him out was fine. He did it wrong. Fine. But this shows us, and I'm gonna piss people off, This was inevitable.
Yeah.
If
it was a no-win situation.
Because if Obama pulled him out,
Yeah.
the same shit would have happened.
Right.
If Trump would have gotten reelected and he did this, the same. Even if he brought the fury down.
Yeah. He'd be being impeached. He'd be being impeached right now. Just
Well, that aside though, even if he's like, okay, we're pulling out, and then Taliban was like, here we go, boys, and he's like, fuck you, and redeploys.
Yeah.
We're still stuck then.
Yeah.
We're still there.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to say when you talked about Trump laying down the law. That doesn't solve anything because
Right.
now we're just
Right.
still there. Now
Yeah.
the Taliban's going to go back to hiding. So this was eventually, like I said, pushing the addict away, kicking the kid out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, we had to rip the Band-Aid off, and it was horrible, but it was inevitable. I'm repeating myself. 20 years, and it took 13 days
Yeah.
for them to
was-
hit the Capitol.
That I think is the biggest surprise, is just the speed of it. I mean, that's one that I'm like, it shouldn't surprise me, because why not? Why not the next day? I mean, that shouldn't surprise me. But that, yeah, when I started looking at numbers like what you were describing, a 20-year occupation, some people like to call it.
Yeah.
But I don't, to be clear, I don't think it's an occupation. But after 20 years of quote unquote training and prepping and trying to teach these people how to fish, we pull out and they starve to death 13 days later.
Yeah, and it's awful, and I don't want to blame anyone, but like, there's part of me, it's like, so what happened to this military?
Yeah.
We're like, like I said, this equipment that we pretty much gave to them, it was just sitting there. Why didn't anyone get in a helicopter?
Yeah.
What are they that afraid of the Taliban? Like, and I'm not judging them,
No, yeah.
but like, what? I just don't. It's horrible, and I think a lot of people are just jumping to this conclusion of like, Biden's bad, Biden's bad, Biden's bad, and of course he shit the bed here, but everyone's missing this point of, one, like I said, it was inevitable,
Yeah.
and that's where I have to agree with Trump. If in 20 years they can't defend themselves for more than 13 days,
Yeah.
it's not going to take 20 more years. It's not going to take 50. Like, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are missing that point, and it's a horrible thing to say, but.
Like, you got to keep that in mind. Anytime
Yeah.
anybody out there wants to have a discussion, you have to keep in mind, look at the cards that were dealt here. And although President Biden played it completely wrong, it still doesn't mean that he wasn't given a terrible deal here. Because he had a no-win situation.
And that's part of the discussion I was having with someone the other day. It's like, if it was Obama, if it was Trump, if it was Biden, if it was the next person, whoever did it, I think I heard someone call it presidential hot potato.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
That's a great way to
someone eventually has to catch this fucking thing.
Whoops.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And do something with it.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And yeah, to go back to President Bush, when he went in, I think, again, he went in with that same fallacy of thinking, these are reasonable people. They have the same kind of goals we all want, which is, life, liberty, and whatever.
Sure.
Obviously, they think the same way we do.
They want our
the
help.
same things.
Yeah.
We're going to go in. We're going to beat the bad guys because they can't right now. We're going to show them how to beat the bad guys, and then everything will be great. They'll be just like us. And I believed it too. I was like, I'm junior high at the time. Like, hell yeah. Like, yeah, why wouldn't they?
I think the majority of Americans were like, yeah,
Right.
fucking, let's get in Afghanistan.
Right.
Let's solve the problem.
And we forgot Desert Storm so fast. And we forgot the 6 Days Wars before that so fast. Like, we keep forgetting the irresponsibility of trying to get involved over there. But
yeah, and you touched on something else that I think we can segue into now too. Okay, so now I will pick on Trump. Not necessarily, but I remember when he ran his campaign, and I'm going to quote him, but it leads to a bigger issue. When he ran his campaign, he said something like, we're going to stop migration from
Syria.
Muslim countries until, I think the quote was, until we find out what the hell is going on. I remember hearing that, and I was like, bruh, open a history book. Like, I'm still surprised, like, 9/11, don't get me wrong, awful, horrible, not justifiable. But if you read a history book, U.S. had that shit coming. We were fucking, I'm not saying it was all right. I'm not saying we deserved it necessarily, but like, if you read a history book, we've been fucking around in the Middle East, bombing fucking shit up for decades. Even like, if you know your history, like, we created Osama bin Laden. We created him. In the 80s, when Russia was fighting Afghanistan, we had like CIA special forces down there training. It was in Rocky 3. That's the meme that a lot of people are saying.
Oh, yeah.
But the U.S. was there secretly training Afghans to fight them. Osama bin Laden was one of them. And as soon as we kind of flipped the script and took Kuwait's side and started doing like fucking around politically, Osama bin Laden was like, well, fuck y'all. And I know it's a hard truth to face, but like we were fucking around in that region so hard. Like if I sit here and just started flicking your forehead,
and I finally hit you back,
eventually you're gonna punch me in that mouth. Like,
so to be clear, just to defend what Mike said, he doesn't mean America had 9/11 coming. He does not mean that.
I did say that specifically. I'm not saying it was justified. I'm not saying those were good people.
But we can't be surprised that it happened.
That's exactly
is what is the point he's trying to make. Not to speak for you, but
no,
I can
but
see
just
that,
to clear,
I can see
clear
that
it up.
soundbite being so. Context is everything here, guys.
Yes.
Calm down.
I'm not supporting.
Someone's gonna take that soundbite and put it on.
Great publicity.
9/11, America had it coming. Like, oh my god.
No, but when I said had it coming, I mean, are you surprised? Yeah.
To clarify all that, first of all, correct.
But so historically, and we talked about this briefly off camera before we started, and this goes back to not even blaming Biden, but the whole operation to begin with. And like you said, this happens all the time. What did we just create?
A note I made, and I wrote it down, was the Iraqi withdrawal. Some would argue, some would not, but some would argue that when President Obama was president in office, and his withdrawal from Iraq created what we came later to find out as ISIS, or the Islamic State of Iraq.
I remember hearing,
And so when you see the same kind of thing happen, we withdraw, a powerful force moves in, usually a bad powerful force, and they create something pretty nasty.
Yeah.
So does this mean I don't think it's going to be a whole other ISIS. I think it's just going to be the Taliban with some gusto. So we'll see. Well,
there's that. That's on a macro scale in a sense. I was thinking more of like, because I remember someone said, and it wasn't necessarily Trump or Obama, but they said every time you drop a bomb on a building in the Middle East, you create 4 or 5 new terrorists.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because now, like, hypothetically...
I think I saw that in a movie.
Probably.
Yeah.
You get a lot of shit jumbled. Yeah. But so even now you think about it, let's say you're a 12-year-old kid, 12 years old, you were born into this. And so you're kind of like, oh, America's good. They're here to help. They're here to help. And then you flip the news on one day, and you see your people falling from airplanes from America leaving. And you're like, what? And the bad Taliban you read about, who was gone since your whole life, is moving in now because the Americans don't give a shit. I'm not saying we don't. I'm saying this kid in Afghanistan is seeing this now, and they're like, well, fuck America.
Yeah.
Even, I was talking to somebody, even on our soil, what if you are a legitimate migrant from the Middle East, and you're a kid here, and your parents were adults, understand the context for everything, but all you're seeing is your homeland being abandoned. Now you have a homegrown possible. Like this, and this, I'm not even blaming Biden necessarily, but just the situation we got ourselves into.
Yeah.
By trying to help and sticking our nose in everyone's business, we're kind of low-key creating all sorts of new problems. And that's kind of where my head's going. So you said, like, yeah, when we backed out of Iraq, we kind of created ISIS. What's being created now? Forget the Taliban, just like on a low-key, like what group is now like, fuck these people? Yeah. Excuse me. And that's not necessarily, like I said, the hot potato. Someone had to do it. It was going to come eventually.
I mean, again, a lot of that could have been alleviated by, first of all, our damn president being public about what's going on, not at Camp David while this whole shit's going down. That's a whole other discussion to have. To get on my soapbox for just a minute.
Sure.
Last year we had some pretty bad ice storms in Texas. Remember that? Caused like this massive blackout, and a lot of people froze to death. Some people died of carbon monoxide poisoning, of running their engines inside their houses. It was a horrible, horrible thing. Coincided with the event where Senator Cruz was on vacation in Mexico.
Yeah.
He did a quick turnaround, like he was there, and he's like, "No, I'm just dropping off my daughter." And everyone was like, "Bullshit, dude." And he's like, "All right, yeah, it was bullshit. I'm coming back though. I'm coming back. Let's get this figured out." The media railed him for that.
At least he came back.
But he came back. Came back or not? The media railed him. Everywhere you look, the scumbag senator is more preoccupied with his vacation than with the people. So, I mean, it's a shocker that media can be biased. I know it's a shocker. But the fact that President Biden has been at Camp David for the past 2 weeks with no word. And
did he come back yet?
I think he just came back.
Because to counter you real quick, I do know absolutely media is biased. But even I was watching some report, and even like I forgot her name.
Kamala Harris.
No, there's a reporter on CNN.
Maddow?
Keller? Not Maddow. Maddow's at MSNBC. I don't listen to Maddow. I think it was Keller. I forgot her, but she's usually pretty biased. But even she was talking to like one of his advisors, and she's like, "Where the fuck is he?"
Yeah.
Where is even CNN was like, maybe I agree that they didn't probably hit the hammer as much.
Yeah, and I know I just said I hate playing the what if the whatever, but what if this were the other way around? What if it were not even Trump? What if it were an independent, whoever Johnson, whatever his name was, and he was just gone for 2 weeks while all this was happening? Do you think anyone wouldn't be having a conniption about this? But
I think there's an argument to be made there. I don't think he's been at Camp David for 2 weeks. I think it was like last Friday or something.
Okay,
I think
I don't check my facts.
Fact check us.
Fact check us in the week. Someone tell me how I posted an article from 2 years ago.
No, right. I would agree though. I know they did a lot of the news networks did say, where the fuck is he? Why isn't he here?
Yeah.
But I would agree with you that with Ted Cruz it was hammered a lot more. I would agree with you on that.
Even with Biden's misgivings, he's given a lot of wiggle room. Like, I mean, they're letting him get away with a lot.
That's an argument to be had, and I think that's a great idea for a different episode.
Another political.
Okay. But no, going back to it though, like, yeah, like all of Biden's misgivings aside, because obviously he didn't handle this good. But again, going back to it, who would have handled it, like this, we need, for once in American history, learn the fucking lesson.
We won't.
But that's where the conversation came from. You brought up, everyone talks about Saigon. I'll even go back further, and please fact check me if I'm wrong. It's some, we all read different things. Go back to, I'm not going to go too into it because I don't want to, it's a conversation for another show. Do I have a bottle opener?
I do have a bottle opener. Do you want
No, I'm okay. I'm still going. Okay. Brought to you by 805. Go back to the Civil War.
Reconstruction?
Yeah, because the North went scorched earth.
Yeah.
And kind of, the history is kind of fuzzy to me, but to my knowledge, like, kind of left the South, like, kind of helped.
Oh, yeah.
But it was kind of like...
No. It was like, no, learn your lesson.
So you're back with us, right? Hey, you're fucking good, right? We're fucking good, right?
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Build this shit back.
Yeah. Hey, you left a mess.
Yeah.
But clean yourself off. You're bleeding.
Because, you're right. The reason why I bring that up, I had a friend, Ortiz. You've met him.
Yeah.
Some years back, he sent out an email to some of us, just a rant. He's like, I don't know who else to send this to.
Name dropper.
Only last name. But he sent out an email to like 5 or 6 people he likes to talk to. It was just a rant, and he's like, some of the political division we have today regarding Confederate monuments, Confederacy stuff.
Okay.
Could that have been solved if instead of just ripping the South apart and saying, now deal with it, if there was a more hands-on, okay, look, we fucked you up. Let's work together now and rebuild.
Right.
Would there be the whole debate of the Confederate flag, the Confederate
South
statues?
will rise again shit.
Would there be a different story being told now?
Absolutely.
So this isn't even just recent history. This is
1800s,
this goes back.
Whatever. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess the point I was trying to make with Biden being AWOL at the moment was that if we handled this withdrawal better, I mean this and this is Monday morning quarterbacking here. If he
I've never heard that phrase, but I like it.
It's that hindsight is 20/20, and everyone's saying, well, if this could have been better, but there is some basic common sense stuff to be like, everyone can say they can do a better job, but I think everyone can agree, even President Biden right now would probably agree that
mistakes were made.
Huge mistakes.
Obviously mistakes.
Not only in logistics, but with policy. If he were more public about like the process of doing this all and then helping like, look, okay, I know we said we were leaving for 20 years, but now we really are. See, that Humvee's leaving. It's not coming back. Give it a week. See, it's still not coming back.
Yeah.
You want to get your shit together or what? And, if that whole process, like a better reconstruction kind of thing.
So it wouldn't be just like a last minute panic. It's
right.
Something planned. Yeah.
That would leave the citizens with a better taste in their mouth about us just bailing on them
before they get
before they just get raked.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's a fair point to make. My point mainly is on a larger scale. Like we in history we keep fucking doing this shit.
Yeah.
Went to Vietnam, accomplished nothing in Vietnam, left, and they got fucked. You could probably name a few other countries, smaller conflicts that we've done the same to. Mm-hmm. So now we went in Afghanistan, spent 20 years there, left, and what are we going to, at the end of the day, if we started at zero a year from now, where's it going to be? It's going to be back to zero.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, for those of you listening, we're doing this right now. It is August 18th.
Wednesday.
So this is happening right now. So we're kind of like wondering we've seen the mess ups so far. There's talks of, 10 to 15,000 American civilians still in Afghanistan, trying to get out. And, depending on what news source you read, everyone will say they're either taken hostage or they're in process of being moved out.
Sure.
There's talks of Marines going back in to get like more control of the area.
In the airport specifically. Too,
to try to fix things out. So in a week from now, a lot of this might smooth over. We don't know.
You don't know.
But it'll be kind of fun to follow this.
Yeah. And like I said, though, that's my main takeaway, larger scale. And I'm repeating myself, I know, but I feel like it needs to be hammered in.
Yeah.
This is, and I am proud to be American. I love being an American. I love this country. But sometimes you got to look inward and know that you're fucking up and you've been fucking up.
You need to acknowledge your mistakes.
Yeah. So like we can't, like I said, the Civil War is an example on our own soil.
Yeah.
Vietnam. There's probably, like I said, there's been a dozen smaller conflicts where we go and intervene on behalf of countries. And it seems like at the end of the day, we just wreck shit more. And so like the next time, like hypothetically, if there's another terrorist attack a year from now, maybe just don't go and invade Afghanistan. Maybe think of something else to do. Something else. I don't know. I'm not saying I have all the solutions, but this approach clearly is not working.
Yeah. It's rough because up till now, anytime there was an attack, it was a government that did the attack. Pearl Harbor, that was a country that did that attack. So we were like, well, we go to war with that country, right?
Sure.
And then now it's like, when 9/11 happened, I think everyone was like, well, shit, that was a huge thing. That was a huge thing. And yeah, it was a huge organization that did it. Cool. So who do we go after for that whole organization? I don't know. Let's look at the map here and throw a dart. And those bastards,
It would be kind of like if, this is not completely an equivalency, but like if the mafia in New York blew up the Capitol in Iraq.
Yeah.
And the Iraqis are like, how do we go to war with?
Now there's a case to be made there. It's like, okay, well, we're going to war with America. Well, why? Because your organization in your country did this, and you're not checking them. And you're.
And yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So then if Iraq was the example we use, if they're like, hey, give us those people, or we're gonna fucking have problems, and the U.S. government was like, those are American citizens, we can't just hand them over.
Yeah.
Iraq would be like, well, okay,
we're coming to get them. Just so you know, we're coming.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, and I know that
it is a new thing.
Yeah,
because the same thing, even if like this is a random example, probably more appropriate actually, if one of these crazy redneck militia groups that hang out in the sticks in Alabama, actually California has some too.
Yeah.
If they went and killed some folks in Southern America somewhere, and they're like, oh well, the freedom fighters from Kentucky came and killed 1,000 of our citizens, we want them. It's the same thing. Like,
yeah,
they're not really they're not America. They're Americans.
Yeah, but
so how do you deal with? No, that's actually a fair point, because that's kind of a new thing.
There was kind of a talk about it earlier this year with the hackers that shut down that pipeline on the East Coast, because they found out it was a Russian hacker group. And so everyone's like, okay, Russia, what's going on? And Putin's like, that wasn't us. It was people here, but that wasn't us. And everyone's like, okay.
Yeah, well, Russia's a little different than Afghanistan, obviously. But no, that's a fair point, though, because like there are now people who are capable of doing things on their own,
right? And
now do you hold a country responsible for it?
Right.
That's a fair. Yeah. That's an argument to be had.
And I think back in the day, when a serf would attack a royal's, son or whatever in another kingdom, the kingdoms went to war, and
the kingdoms went to war because
Troy got wrong. Yeah. Troy got sacked because a dude had to get laid, and that's just what happened. And now because we're so like, there's so much coverage on all the innocent people of Troy that way. Can you imagine Troy happening today? It's like
it'd be fucking
the subject. We know a lot about the Trojan War, but because of what caused it. But if it were today, no one would give a shit about what caused it. They would just be focusing on Troy being sacked. You know what I mean? So it's like today, it's just that the old school military and politics just don't apply.
And they call it almost the War of Kings. I remember I took a Western civilization history class in college, and literally the first until we got to like the 1800s or 1700s, it was literally like just names, not even countries. Names went to war against each other.
Wow,
because of slights.
Yeah.
You didn't want to marry my sister?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Send over the troops.
War.
Like it was literally like this. Like it was like the families.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, the War of Kings. The Wars of Kings.
Oh, okay.
Just families didn't get along, so they're like, "Hey, boys, let's go fight."
Why? It doesn't matter.
Why? He called me an asshole. No, but yeah, you're right about that, and it's a whole new context of war, and
It's frustrating because it's not new. It's still new to us. If that makes any sense. It's like it's
Yeah, I guess
concepts.
so.
It's concepts of struggle and war that's been going on in the Middle East since forever, and it's still new to us. It's still stuff we're trying to grasp, and we're still trying to apply our World War military strategy to something a lot more just different. I don't know if it's more complicated or less complicated. It's just way more different, and we're still not really grasping.
and it's a not an equivalency, but like it's almost the same thing. If we go, people have made the argument, if you go anywhere where there's still tribes that haven't been seen or spoken to, and you try to tell them like, hey, you're cutting that fruit with this knife, but what about this knife? It's so much sharper. And it's like, if that's the way they want to do it, let them do it that way. Like, who are we to tell them to change their culture if that's the way they live?
Yeah, but then you get into
And obviously there's objective things. If they're just murdering people for no reason,
Right,
then
right,
stop.
right.
But I think you're right that there is a cultural thing, not necessarily religion, but a cultural thing in that area that's just we don't get, or we're just refusing to understand.
and because Americans are just really, really dumb, they don't want to spend the time learning it.
Yeah.
And they'd rather be told good guys, bad guys. Those are the bad guys. Let's just get this done so, we can just get it covered and Americans don't riot for something they don't understand, which happens all the time anyway. So I don't get it. But
Yeah, I think we're almost at an hour here,
yay.
but
We're just getting started, man.
we're another 3 hours.
I
Bring
got
the
a
beer
whole
out.
other page. No. Anyway.
No, I just I think what we could agree on this, because I don't even think this has been a debate. We're just discussing the issue. But it's clear that this is the summary to me that everyone should take away, not just from us, just from the situation. Yes, Biden fucked up. He fucked this up. He has to own that. We'll see. It was kind of weird the other day when he spoke. He's like, the buck stops with me, but, and I was like, well, does the buck stop with you then? Because again, not to push blame away from him, he did say that quote, which I kind of agree with. The military collapsed in 13 days.
Yeah.
He said it differently, like 13 days. There's a point to be made there.
Yeah.
But his wording, the buck stops with me, but. It's like,
But yeah.
Anyway, going back to the summary. Yes, Biden fucked up. There's no way around it. There's no partisan argument you can make for saying that he did not do a bad job on this. Second point to take away. That being said, moving forward, we need to just remember this has been building for 20 years and the political hot potato we were talking about.
It was kind of a no-win situation.
Yeah.
And
It was kind of even, again, I'm not a Trump person, but when he kind of fucked up at the beginning of the COVID thing, a lot of people were like, fucking Trump. And I was like, look, he fucked up. Yeah, but like, it's kind of a thing that no one really knew what to do at first. So like later we could talk about that. It's another conversation. But at first I was like, it's hard to get mad at him when this is a new thing that hasn't happened in over 100 years. So that's kind of what I'm getting at Biden. Like he fucked it up. He needs to own it. But we have to remember this is a 20-year thing that has been building, and whoever was in office at the time was going to eat this shit sandwich. 3, America, we need to learn from this shit and stop fucking around the world.
yeah, history won't repeat itself again.
I swear.
No, they will. They
Absolutely will.
They will. We will try. We'll learn, but we still keep doing.
30
the same
years from
things.
now, this
Yeah.
will be ancient history.
30 years from now, when we're pulling out of the
The China-Soviet.
the Brazilian and Cuban occupation, and America's just like, all right, we're out, and then
then Brazil takes Cuba again.
yeah, and Brazilian wax has a whole different meaning. We'll be saying like, why didn't we learn what?
Like, what? Americans never learn.
We got it this time, guys.
It's just,
Oh dear.
that's what I took away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be very interesting. Well, I'm sure that this will blossom a lot more episodes, because this is obviously a very big deal on a world scale, not just an American conflict thing. But in the coming weeks, we're going to have a lot of refugees to deal with, and decide what we're doing with.
Yeah.
I'm predicting that majority will go to Europe. and I'm predicting, and I'm going to sound sexist and horrible here, but I'm predicting that the majority of refugees are going to be soldier-ready males that just don't want to fight. They're going to be young adult males that just want to get out. And that's what I'm predicting because it keeps happening.
I think you might be right, man. Like 13 days, that military was probably mainly male because that's their society.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was an image I saw today of that one of the planes being flown out of Afghanistan, and it was an image of all the people in the plane. It was like 90% males in the plane being evacuated out. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah. It's rough.
There might be a point to be made there.
That'll be a whole other discussion. Yeah. It's like, why aren't you fighting?
It's one thing. I think when I was discussing it with my mom, that Biden said that, and he said something like, we shouldn't be fighting for a country that's not going to fight for themselves. Mm-hmm. And even though that was a fucking dumb thing to say, and your first speech on the matter, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but that's what you're going to say right now?
It's like you just punch someone in the face, and then when someone's like, why'd you do that? It's like, well, he had a glass jaw. Okay.
I was like, you're not wrong, bruh, but like chill.
Tact a little bit.
Yeah,
it's just all a shit show, and we have nothing really good to say about it because it's just all bad. It's just all bad. And the more we hear about it, the more... I mean, the Taliban came out today and said they want to be acknowledged by the world community or whatever, and we're a lot more progressive now. And I'm like, you know what? Given your record, I believe you.
You haven't lied before.
Yeah. No. And then you see images of the next day of them graffitiing over women's images in public because, I mean, that could just be tabloid shit.
They didn't like the art,
but I'll believe it when I effing see it. You liars, you're liars that lie, and I'm just not going to suddenly start believing you.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
we could just keep going in circles, but my hope. Let's end on the hope. My hope is that Americans learn from this.
Please God,
Americans learn from this. And mistakes on a grand scale like this don't happen again. 2, I hope that the Taliban's obviously going to be in control again because...
I mean, they literally are.
The president fled.
I like it.
The president fled, as they do sometimes. And what the fuck's he going to do? Make an executive order saying the Taliban needs to leave? What the fuck's he going to do? He's done. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. He's fucking done. If the entire military right now chased Biden out of the White House, and from Canada, Biden's like, I order the military to stand down. Military would be like, go fuck yourself. No, I'm not saying that should happen. To be clear.
Come do that. Come do it.
To be clear, I'm not advocating for that to happen. I'm just making an analogy. To be clear.
Yeah.
No, so the Taliban's taking over. Hopefully, I hope that maybe the Taliban will come to the table on issues that they didn't come to the table on before. Like you said, when 9/11 happened and this whole thing started, I think you said you were in middle school. I think I was just starting high school. So we didn't know what the fuck was going on back then.
Yeah.
I don't know the state of Afghanistan was before that. But I hope that they at least can come to the table and work with other countries now. That's what one thing I read was a lot of people were like, okay, if they're there, let's talk to them and try to get something that happen with them. I hope that goes well. Hope is a very strong word here.
Yeah. And we'll see what the other nations in the world do with it as well. It'll be... Because it's kind of like, okay, I feel like we're finally like, okay, you know what? We're done. Anyone else? We're done. At least China's already... Well, it'll be interesting what China does.
So that is actually interesting. I was reading, just scrolling through shit, so economically now, Afghanistan does not have a good history with Russia.
Okay, yeah. Several times, yeah.
Yeah, they do not have a good history with Russia. The Taliban's like, United States, don't really like you anymore. So who's the next big economic powerhouse that they could start doing business with and benefit from?
Yeah.
China.
Interesting.
I read that that would be the next place for them to look to as a smaller country.
I seem more likely that rather than Afghanistan looking, China will seek it out.
Yeah, that same thing. Yeah, exactly. And that's if you're looking to buy, and you don't like Pepsi or Coca-Cola, RC is licking their lips.
Yeah. See?
What's the meme? The guy coming out from the tree?
Yeah.
That's
RC is looking at
That's
yeah,
RC.
China is RC. That's just the best analogy I think I've ever heard about China.
cheap, but it works.
Yeah. America's Coke, Russia's Pepsi, China's RC.
Whoa. America's Pepsi.
Okay. Well,
If you think about the commercial, America's kind of Pepsi. We could solve the problem.
I hate to admit I'm wrong right now.
Parachute a bunch of Pepsis in a...
Should we call it there? Should we call
Let's
it there?
call it
So
there.
it's a good place. Okay, so we hit on a lot of spots. Are obviously very limited in our expertise about this, but it's some opinions. People, their opinions. We're just a couple of working guys here. We're a couple of black shirt buddy, guys just trying to get out there with our bootstraps and just get home and go somewhere where everyone knows our name. We're just a couple of guys, and these are just beer talks, I think. But let us know what you think.
Well, and let us know what you think. And one of the reasons why we acknowledge our ignorance, but we still have the conversation, is because I think it's good to have calm conversations.
Yeah.
Where we don't get into yelling fits and stupid,
Right.
hyperbolic arguments.
Earlier, I quoted Ben Franklin. It was something he said in his autobiography, is that he gets way more positive feedback when giving his opinion if he prefaces everything with, quote, "It seems to me that blah blah blah." It's kind of a disarmament, almost like a.
Well, it's saying I'm going to make a statement, but I could be wrong.
It's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So I feel like this podcast should have been named "It Seems to Me," but because it'll be fun going back and listening to this to seeing how many times we said this is just my opinion, and I might just be completely ignorant, and but.
And even if we say that too many times, I prefer someone admitting it. Because like I said, I might have been wrong about a few things I said today.
I know I'm wrong about most of the things I said.
But hey, our 7 watchers, comment on the YouTube video or the Facebook post and tell us, one, where we were wrong, where you think we were wrong, your opinion, and what you want us to talk about next.
We can expand on several things on this,
Yeah.
obviously. And like we said, it's going to be a continuing thing. We'll expand more on it. So, this episode not brought to you by Pepsi. Pepsi, go to hell. I don't care how many drinkers you have. You're terrible. You're terrible. You're terrible. And thank you for watching Fake Philosophers. I am Mitch. This is Mike. Glad you listened.
Thank you.